I want people to understand the monetary nature of gold and silver for the public and gold for, large corporations, banks, and capital. But on that note, I want to clarify something, that it's not really the Comex that's the problem, because the Comex sells contracts, derivatives of, let's say, wheat and oats, head of cattle, frozen concentrated orange juice, whatever. And there's not really a problem with those, because those are consumer goods. I mean, if you take, there's no monetary price of orange juice and then a real price of orange juice. But because gold and silver are money metals, right? And this is what people have to understand. This is what's going on in the Comex is nothing special. It's just another version of the fractional reserve system that has existed ever since banks exist to store your money, and then they could cheat by printing more receipts than they actually had.
Hey everybody, this is 𝙂𝙋𝙍𝙊𝙎, 𝙂𝙎𝙋𝙍𝙊𝙎, and what you're about to see is part 2 of a very special roundtable that we did to discuss Rafi Farber's experience with trying to get a silver contract, 5,000 ounces of silver, actually physically off of Comex. As you may have saw in the video that we premiered yesterday at 12 p.m. Central that we did specially for Rafi, he was able to get the warrant, or the piece of paper that said he had 5,101 physical silver ounces, but the broker, Interactive Brokers, would not let him physically load it out, so he was not able to physically get the metal. I put together this special roundtable for the purposes of talking about that and what it actually means, and it includes Rafi Farber, Chris Marcus, Yarra Venne, both of Arcadia Economics, Craig Hemke of TF Metals, Andy Schectman of Miles Franklin, Dave Kranzler of Investment Research Dynamics, and James Anderson of SD Bullion. This is part 2 of that roundtable. If you did not see the first half, go back and look for the video that came out last night where we do the first half of this roundtable. This is part 2 of this very special roundtable where we wrap up our final thoughts on what it actually means when you can't get silver off the Comex. Is it a legitimate market? Stay tuned. Our guests give their answer in part 2.
And also you realize, wow, well, we don't need this system by just using all of the talented people here. So Rafi, I mean, I would say rather than 𝙁𝙊𝙇𝙑, just whatever hours, don't waste it with those guys. Anything the Comex, just help continue the discussion we had the other day where we're talking to people. Florian Grumings, he's European, he's from somewhere in Europe, and then he's over in Dubai. I mean, they're trading gold and silver there. And perhaps one last thing, if I might mention, I have heard from a company that I will leave nameless, but I think everyone would know that they're hearing more requests directly from users, and especially if producers don't even get Comex spot price. Imagine what's possible if we just stop funding the JP Morgan bonus pool. And I think what Rafi did and followed through with and is documented is a great nail in that coffin.
I agree with you. I don't have anything additional to say that. Rafi, what's next for you? What do you plan on doing next?
What do I plan on doing? I'm going to continue writing. I might open an account either maybe at Paragon or 𝙂𝙃𝙊𝙎 if I can, and see if I can get the bars out. Look, I'm mostly a monetary educational person. I mean, I want people to understand the monetary nature of gold and silver for the public and gold for, large corporations, banks, and capital. But on that note, I want to clarify something, that it's not really the Comex that's the problem, because the Comex sells contracts, derivatives of, let's say, wheat and oats, head of cattle, frozen concentrated orange juice, whatever. And there's not really a problem with those, because those are consumer goods. I mean, if you take, there's no monetary price of orange juice and then a real price of orange juice. But because gold and silver are money metals, right? And this is what people have to understand. This is what's going on in the Comex is nothing special. It's just another version of the fractional reserve system that has existed ever since banks exist to store your money, and then they could cheat by printing more receipts than they actually had. A dollar is a paper representation of gold and silver, just like a contract is. And the temptation the temptation to print more above what you have is always there because you can spend it and get stuff for yourself. This is nothing new. It's been around for thousands of years. Now, the gold and silver price on the Comex, people have to understand, is it is an accurate price for gold and silver as an industrial commodity only. In that way, it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense to trade money itself on a futures exchange. You use money to trade other things on a futures exchange. But since gold and silver have a monetary price and an industrial price, those two things get confused, and the monetary price cannot be revealed. The monetary price is the 100% backing price of all paper in terms of gold and silver, and we don't know what that is, and that's what we're trying to figure out here.
Good point. So if people want to get their silver, we know that Comex is not the best way to do it. What's the best way to do it? I know for your fund, Dave, you said you don't rely on Comex. How do you go about getting metals?
Just buy bullion from dealers.
Still the best way?
I mean, for small funds like us and retail, for sure. High net worth people, absolutely. I think the real price discovery market is what countries like India are paying for gold, which is quite a bit above the global spot price. So, and actually, the Comex is really, it's just a pure derivatives market. There's not any real price discovery going on there. I mean, when large entities or sovereigns want gold, they go and they get it from London. So there are bars that have to be removed from London and shipped to the people who are buying them. My understanding is that a couple of the large gold miners like Newmont and Barrick have direct supply contracts with banks like JP Morgan, and they just ship the doré to refiners who then ship it to India or refine it into kilo bars and ship it to India or China. So there's still a semblance of a physical market in London, but certainly not the Comex. Comex is just pure paper.
One point to add to that, India Metals Focus just came out, and a week or so ago, they said that India re-entered the silver market in terms of demand, and they said that they took 32 million ounces in October after a really large September as well. But then they just came out with another report, and the number actually they showed in the next report was 40 million ounces. And so that is at levels of 2015 levels in terms of height, in terms of India demand. And so if you keep doing that, India, and then the silver squeeze returns in terms of any type of investors come flocking in. If you have a price running toward 30 again, it's going to put a real pinch on the supply. The combination of India and then ETF inflows and physical demand that starts ramping up, because once it gets back toward 30, you're going to have a whole bunch of momentum traders run into it who want to get a quick buck, or people who get excited about bullion getting beyond 30 and then running at 50. So it's just a quick point. And a lot of the silver, they broke down where it was coming from. The vast majority came out of the United Kingdom. And so the United Kingdom, most people think Switzerland refines the silver. No, it's basically the United Kingdom, like Johnson, Maffei, and all these other refiners that have been there historically. And that's mostly where the silver to India goes through. It goes through the United Kingdom. And China as well. China and Hong Kong. Those are the other major refiners of silver. So just for your own notifications and understanding how that flow works.
One thing I asked Rafi prior to us recording was, he writes the Endgame Investor for Seeking Alpha. Rafi, what is the end game? I mean, you talk about the end game. What is the end game? And do you think, given this experience with Comex and how thin we think the metals market is in reality, are we getting close to the end game? Is that impossible to tell still, or are there telltale signs we're getting there?
There are signs. How I see it is we're already starting to see persistent backwardation, meaning higher spot prices than futures prices in many different commodities, and that means persistent shortages. We're seeing it in copper and oil, even despite this last 15% plunge in oil. Oil is still in backwardation despite that. And when commodities are in backwardation for a long time, it encourages persistent destocking of these commodities, because companies that stock these things, they can't buy at futures and then sell for a profit. Because backwardation prevents that. So they have to keep destocking the commodity onto the market, and then they run out. So, but what really these persistent backwardations are is it's a surplus of dollars which won't stop, because they have to keep printing now to keep the whole pyramid going. And the end game will be when the public when the public calls the Fed's bluff and dumps the money. And that happens in every country where this occurs. It's happened many times in history, but never globally. This end game is the same thing that we've seen in 1923, the same thing we saw in 2008 in Zimbabwe, just not on a small scale. It'll be on a global scale this time. And we've never seen that before. And when that happens, people will have to return to money itself, which is gold and silver, instead of money substitutes that keep getting inflated over the real money supply. So when does that happen? Well, watch the CPI, even though it's it's bullshit, but it still means something because it affects people's psychology. It's going to keep going up. There's nothing the Fed can do about it, and it's just a matter of time now. Exactly how much, I don't know. You just got to wait.
Yeah. Well, it's been an interesting journey. I've certainly enjoyed it, from my end, and then of course seeing the stuff come out. Chris, any thoughts for you on? I know you've been documenting this on Arcadia Economics. Anybody who wants to see the process as it was happening can go to Arcadia Economics and see it. What's next? What crazy idea are you going to have next, Chris, for the Comex?
Well, one of the things I'm excited to get ready is my legal file. I can't imagine what more evidence a court would need to see. I'm not a lawyer, though, so we have had meetings. We have an email list that a whole bunch of people signed up for that either want to take legal action against the banks or the regulators, some of whom are lawyers. A couple people in there are actually involved in some of the suits. I know a lot of your viewers saw JP Morgan settled $50 million suit recently. They didn't name which one it was in there, although it sure sounded like Daniel Shack, who I've studied. So there's a lot of things that can be done because they're dishing out a couple million here, a couple million there. And rather than just being upset about it, doing what we can to get reimbursement, but really just living life completely as much as possible without using or needing that system. And if people want to buy metal through the Comex, that's fine. But I'm excited that, and I've talked with a lot of the people on the call here today of different ways that, if the producers are getting 95% of spot, if we stop funding the Goldman and Ross Benham bonus pool, why are premiums going up to $7, $8, $9, $10 over spot? No wonder people get scared away from silver. But I think for people who are saying, well, I'm getting forced out of a corporate job or not sure what to do, there's plenty of opportunity in a broken industry like this. So especially the legal file, I think, will be a silver mine, shall we say.
So you'll be glad to know, Chris, that old Rosti has been nominated to be the permanent CFTC chairman. And they believe so much in him that they're putting the CFTC in place to help regulate cryptos and the new regulation that the Biden administration wants to put out. So we can be assured that cryptos will be safe for everybody because Rostin Benham's in charge.
Well, I think people can also rest assured that anyone that stamps their name on shit like that, including Rob, actually, I didn't send this to you, but I was seeing if Rusty made any new YouTube appearances, and there was one congressman who was grilling him about his global climate warming things, which he seems focused on. And there was another where it was like a Senate panel. They were questioning him for an hour and a half. And as I watched that, and he talked about how concerned he was, this was the agricultural department. So Rossi's up there saying how he loves the farmer. He grew up standing for the farmer and all that stuff. It was ironic because the night before I'd watched the Keith Neumeier video with Daniela Camboni, where he was talking about Ross, bragging about tamping down the price and saying, this is the guy supposed to be regulating it. Why does Ross, if he for some reason refuses to look at the evidence I sent in, why can't he address any of the other people here? Why can't he address any of the people who've contacted the office? Why can't he address the silver producers? So there's a lot of hypocrisy that is there, yet again, looking for the positives. Now, to me, every single person that was in the room at Ralston's hearing, now we'll receive clear, concise instructions of the evidence of silver manipulation, how Ralston condoned it, benefiting along with the banks. And if they ignore it, then they become accomplice to treason to the nation's currency, which for some farcical reason serves as the world's global reserve currency. So really, it's quite silly, and at least for people who want to make their own decisions with full information in mind. It's nice because now we have people who are volunteering, so we can make sure that each of those guys at the hearing, yes, their office confirmed receipt of the evidence. So not like, hey, I didn't get the file, or Elizabeth Warren, who's supposedly investigating these Fed governors, yet Craig, I saw on your great site, TF Metals yesterday, you're showing the pictures of, oh, well, all of a sudden Powell thinks inflation isn't transitory. Well, maybe they should replace him and put someone on the call here, because we all were clear on that years ago. And now then I'm looking, and then I'm reading Craig's site, and then, just for entertainment, I flip over to CNBC, and having a trading background in the options pit, now I'm breaking down the algorithms and the codes of how the media is used to pump and dump certain things. And you notice how they always quote Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan. And I've contacted CNBC multiple times. They are well aware of the evidence I've submitted to the CFTC, and that I've accused them of fraud, and I said, are you aware that Jeff Curry came on and committed felonies on your channel? Person I sent it to said yes. I said, are you going to let your supervisor know? And I gave up asking. Similar with the CFTC, Donna the Falkwhite of the Media Relations Department is going to find out that now she's an accomplice to this. And I don't care if 10 years from now they recognize the crime that is happening now, because these guys they're arresting, this was from 12, 13 years ago when Gensler said he couldn't find shit. So I don't plan to wait another 10 years. These guys are not good criminals. Now I also have certain advantage that I know the cracks in this fraudulent scheme, and when anyone at home watching this also realizes that the fact that you don't become a criminal, that you figure out how to go through life with good positive partnerships, you have a mental advantage over these guys, and there's a reason they don't respond, and it'll be exciting to see the resolution of that.
I think the next thing we need to do, Chris, is get the Big Silver short into movie format. So we can work on that next. Maybe we can raise enough money and get that out there, as an educational piece. I think Rafi's video and his, what he went through as a first step. I think we need to expose the bigger scheme. Last question I have for you guys. I'll let anybody jump in. Silver is getting hammered as we record this on December 1st, about 3 p.m. Central, to about $22 and change. How quick does that change if people figure out there's a shortage, and will it change? Is this going to change in the near future?
I just want to clarify quickly. Physical silver isn't getting hammered. Paper silver is getting hammered.
That's right.
That's
exactly my point. When does that change? When
I don't
people
know
make that
anyone
distinction.
Anyone who's watching this and is thinking about buying silver is an idiot if they don't call up Andy right after this and buy a bunch of silver.
I think Rafi said it best. It's when people lose confidence in the currency, and it hasn't happened yet. When people cross that threshold of having any confidence whatsoever in the currency, and it becomes a hot potato. I mean, look, all you got to do is take a look at the desperation that is being thrown into the system. Bank of America just came out the other day and said that over $900 billion was pumped into the equity markets this year. That is more than the combined 19 years previously combined. So when you look at inflation, they have us believe that the CPI is inflation. The rising prices are a symptom of the fact that half of every dollar ever created in the history of this country was done so in the last 20 months. The massive increase in the money supply will not end. They will not taper. If they do, it'll be token. And at some point, people are going to wake up and be like, my God, it's not going to end. It's only getting worse. And in 1980, the resolution was to raise interest rates to 20%. That ain't going to happen this time around. They're going to destroy the currency in favor of the equity markets. And I think at some point there will become a realization that this is happening. And that's when it happens, when everyone rushes through that revolving door at once. Most of them get crushed. The few that have gone in early and have sat and lamented, licking their wounds, said, well, God, look at all the things I've missed. Overnight, we'll realize that was the smartest thing they ever did. But until then, it's going to be more of the same thing. Trying to tell people, hang on, hold tight, trust your gut, have strong fingertips, believe in it. It's happening. And when people look at it and say, Jesus, with the world the way that it is, if it hasn't happened already, is it ever going to happen? And the answer is yes, because if they were able to hold it down forever, silver would still be under $8, gold would still be under $1,000. It's ratcheting up. And just like what's his name? The guy that went broke, and they said, how did you go broke? He said, little by little, then all at once. And that's how this will all happen with inflation, little by little, and bang, we're all going to wake up and be like, oh my God, and that's when the realization comes, and that's when it's too late. So, guys like all of you guys who have been sticking your neck out so far, all of us, trying to tell people we'll have our day of vindication. And I guess it's be careful what you wish for. I don't know that will be the day that we're all going to be real joyous about, but I think it'll happen. In my opinion, they have embarked upon a program of destruction of the US dollar in favor of the equity markets. And at some point that's going to have to, there's going to have to be a price to pay for that.
Hey, James, you're a big monetary metals historian. What is your thought on what is the breaking point?
Well, Andy just nailed it. They're definitely propping up the stock market because the median baby boomer, that's where they're levered into, and they need to keep that prop so the median baby boomer isn't eating dog food and they're not rioting in the streets. And that's just simply the case. I mean, that's exactly why they're pumping up the stock market, so it keeps the wealth effect going. But if you look back at like August 2019, when BlackRock, they went to what's it called, the Jackson Hole Symposium or whatever, and they gave that report talking about going direct. It was a report that talked about central banks coordinating a policy of essentially creating reserves and then getting it out into the hands of the people, like helicopter money essentially. And it's not just the United States, but it's also in the ECB. It's also all these other countries where in the Western world we have huge unfunded liabilities that we can't pay off in real terms. Only way not to break our word and default on those, is to actually inflate away the currency. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's an active plan. It's not like QE1, 2, or 3 of the 2010s. The reserves are now getting out into the monetary base. The monetary base and the reserves are going like this perfectly together. And it is in a direct intention. The inflation is permanent. It is not transitory. And it's only going to get worse. It's only just started. So that is the thing that people need to understand. We're just getting warmed up. And so, like you said, there will be a threshold that always with human beings, the herd finally figures that out, and then they go storming. And there will not be that is where the shortage occurs. The bullion shortage is coming. The silver squeeze was just a kind of a forewarning of where this heads, but there's going to be a shortage of available silver bullion and gold bullion eventually at prices that are even near what spot claims on the Comex. The prices will be through the eye in terms of premium, and the delivery times will be ridiculously long. So what we've seen is only a forewarning. It's going to get much worse. That's my. You have to get it now, and you have to have the faith and the patience to wait that out. Whether or not that happens 2 or 3 years from now, or 4 or 5 or 6, it's going to happen, in my opinion.
Craig, I'm going to end with you. I've asked everybody about their thoughts on the end game. What are your thoughts at TF Metals?
Well, Andy kind of touched on it. These things, whether they're hyperinflationary events, which is really drill that down further, it's a loss of confidence, loss of confidence in the currency, loss of the confidence of the future purchasing power of the currency, loss of confidence in your counterparty to deliver your metal to you. Those things typically go gradually and then all at once. I mean, you're seeing it now in Turkey, right? I mean, the Turkish lira has been devaluing versus the dollar for years, and all of a sudden it's just spiking straight up. I mean, that's generally how this happens. So, I guess I just would wrap it up where we started. I mean, if you want to have an impact on ending the fraud of this pricing scheme, then you got to get your hands on the physical metal, because that's really the only way to spark that loss of confidence. As long as someone that holds a warrant on the Comex, for example, still feels pretty good that, you know, they got their medal, you
Mhm.
know, it's held away in Brinks's vault or whatever. Then as long as they've got the confidence of that, then that metal's gonna stay in that vault, and the banks are gonna continue to hypothecate it, rehypothecate it, and run their unallocated scheme. But as soon as confidence fails, that's when the action starts. And usually, as you guys have said, I mean, everybody kind of comes crowding through the door at once. And so if you've been watching this video and it's opened your eyes and you've learned something, then the lesson is, you know, call up Andy at Miles Franklin or whoever your favorite bullion dealer is and get your hands on some physical metal. And the more that we get out of the greasy banker fingers, the closer we are to actually finding an actual price, a fair price. It's not just for us, but it's for everybody that works at a mining company, all the guys that are actually risking their lives going into a mountainside every day, right? We've got to get to that system. And again, the only way to do it is just keep scratching away at that veneer of confidence until it ultimately fails.
One additional point to the veneer of confidence, people need to learn unsecured GLD shareholders, the unsecured IAU shareholders, the unsecured SLV shareholders.
Right.
They need to learn about what a bag of, not good things they're owning. And they need to switch over to something like a physical, gold fund or PSLV. PHYS is the trading ticker for gold, or just get the bullion directly, like we're all suggesting. It's one of those two. It's that 1-2 punch of a trustworthy closed-end fund or physical delivery to your door if that's easier and more convenient for you.
You got to be willing to fight. You got to be able to stand for your convictions. And no matter how exhausting it is, I mean, God, look at me. I'm a tired old man. I look older than I can.
Thanks everybody
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys so much for joining. I want to thank everybody because everybody on this video, when I put this together, everybody's sacrificing their time. You know, we all run businesses and have other demands on our time. I want to thank everybody for jumping on short notice and doing this. And I want to thank Chris for putting all of this together, the whole process going through the Comex, Rafi for dealing with all the ridiculous garbage that he did.
Yeah.
And Yarra also at Arcadia Economics for being a big part. I think Arcadia Economics has done more for silver in the past couple of years, with all due respect to everybody else, more for silver in that part of the precious metals market than anybody. So I wanted to thank Yarra and Chris for standing up for what they believe in and doing all that they've done. So we're going to wrap it up. This is a special edition. I think we're probably going to release this in 2 parts, guys. So you'll see this in 2 parts since we did an hour. It'll be on the channel. Remember, go to Rafi Farber's channel on YouTube, go to Arcadia Economics on YouTube. We've got all the details there. Of course, on Gold Silver Pros, we'll put the video of Rafi as well. And we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you, everybody, again, for being a part of it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys, have a good day.
Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. We appreciate it. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification button so you get those notifications when new content comes out. If you like what we're doing here, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Those members of Patreon will get extra special content delivered to them as well.